Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. We're here to continue our series of That One Play, and we got a good one for you today. The 2004 Ed Reed interception against the Jets. A lot of you will remember it. You'll have various things, but I guarantee you'll listen to the end of this. You'll probably hear one thing you didn't know by the end of this episode. Joining me to talk about this is Adam McKusick. Adam, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Ken?
Always great to have you on. This is your second of these. Really appreciate it. And, some people want to do 4 of them. Some people, have a couple that they're really eager to do, but I appreciate it. All the enthusiasm for doing these shows. I really appreciate it. Particularly you, Adam.
Oh, sure. Now I can think of a whole bunch. And, but yeah, I remember when I saw you said that this was one of the plays available. I'm like, well, hey, I got to do this one. It was, it's one where the play itself, I remember watching it live, like I'd say live on TV.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching it on TV, but it really took on a whole nother life in the highlight clips that came afterwards, which we'll get into, I guess, later.
Yeah, very, very special broadcast. The first of its kind that the NFL did. Is kind of like the precursor to what show, I don't even know if it's still called Sound FX, but when they brought it on the NFL Network a few years ago, it was called Sound FX, where they use live mics to basically tell a story. And with Sound FX, it's usually to tell the story of an individual play. This was something that Steve Sable wanted to bring in to basically tell the story of the entire game only via the 2 radio announcers and otherwise all mic'd up people who were at the game. So it was players and coaches that both were involved. So Casey Roback was Mike, for example, and he only has like one little highlight from the game where some defensive lineman basically tries to get up by putting his hand on his groin. And he goes, hey, that's his big line.
Nice.
But it's the middle of the 2004 season. Kind of set it up for us here in terms of what you want to, in terms of the how the Ravens were going into the game, what you remember. Take us through it.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I don't remember a whole lot about the game itself or that season. I just remember it as kind of a very blah game in the middle of a very blah season. We were coming off the previous season was a playoff year, and that was Jamal's big season, where he set the single season rushing record, and I think there was a lot of expectations for this season, and I think it was just sort of characteristic of the Billick era that they always played well as underdogs, but when there are expectations, they never lived up to them.
There's definitely something to that, but in this game this year particularly, they're coming into the season with Kyle Boller entering his second season.
Yeah.
And so we're coming back with a great defense. We had hopes that Boller would be better, that the offense would be a little better, that, hey, you've got Jamal coming off 2066 and he's going to be back. It turned out to be a very difficult offensive season. During the offseason, Kyle Boller, and you can actually look this up online. I didn't know this, but Who Dated Who is out there as a website. And apparently Kyle Boller was dating Tara Reid during the 2004 lead up to the offseason there. Billick got on him about it. They were both on some sort of show. It might have been NFL Network, might have been somewhere else. And basically said, Kyle, you ready to come back to work now? Kind of thing. It's like, clearly this was a distraction to him. Tara Reid's also a lot older than him, which I didn't realize, but like 6 years older. So it's a little bit of a strange thing. Didn't last a long time, obviously. Both teams entered this game, the Jets and the Ravens, 5-3, enormous playoff implications on the line. And we've got the Sound FX backdrop to us, but take us through a little bit up to the play.
Leading up to the play, Ravens couldn't get anything going offensively. And this was the Jets team that we were playing. They had gotten Quincy Carter from the Cowboys, and they have I watched too much Chris Berman, Curtis, my favorite Martian, Curtis, my favorite Martin, and Lamont Jordan as their primary running backs. So they had a decent team, and again, thought we had a really good team, but was kind of not quite living up to expectations. And so, but they were able to jump out to a 14-0 lead, and were coming close to going into the half, down 2 touchdowns, and just not really looking good.
Yeah. In fact, the Jets were driving at around the 20-yard line or so for a score that would have been either a field goal or a touchdown to pretty much put the game out of reach. It would have, been 17-0 or 21-0, one of the two. And that wouldn't have been a good place to be at halftime.
Right. And yeah, so at this point, the Jets decide they're going to run a trick play. And if you've never seen it, you actually saw I think a version of it this past season. It was sort of, it looked to me to be the same play as that James Prochet
very
interception that happened this past season. Pretty similar circumstances. And pretty much the same play. So how it works out is, I think Carter hands off to Lamont Jordan, or pitches the ball to Lamont Jordan, who runs laterally towards the sideline, and then sets up to throw a pass, throws it into the end zone. And one difference between that play and this play this past season is, this past season we had 2 receivers right in the area of the ball that brought 4 defenders there. I think in this Jets game, there was no Jets receivers in the area and 4 Ravens defenders all around there. So, but Ed Reed is in the best position to pick it off. So he picks it off in the end zone and runs a little like along the baseline and then brings it out of the end zone and just does one of his patented Ed Reed, brings it out of the end zone and runs the whole length of the field. It ends up not being a touchdown because just as he's about to score, Will Demps holds Quincy Carter, who's one of the pursuing players, and so holding is called. So they bring it back out. I don't know, to like the 15 or the 20.
It was a 78-yard return from -4, so I guess it went to the New York Jets 26. Yeah. But a couple of things about this play. The sound FX thing is the thing I need to comment on, because it was so central to how people remember this play. Yes. Herm Edwards, first of all, and they went between multiple people that they all had mic'd up in this game. It was just fantastic. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was great. So yeah, it's I just keep going back to this play, and it's always this cut that they put out was they would do they showed the handoff and Jordan getting lined up to throw the pass, and they would cut to Herm Edwards. And they got Herm Edwards, and he says something like, "Oh, watch out, Ed Reed! No, don't throw it! Don't throw it! Don't throw it!" Cut back to the gameplay. He throws it, and Ed Reed picks it off. And he starts to run in the end zone. And now they cut to Billick on the other sideline, and he's like, "Okay, get down! Don't bring it out." So of course he does bring it out, and so you see him just bring it out of the end zone and cut back to Billick, like, "Oh my God, Ed, no!" And like really despondent. But then he starts to break it, and then all of a sudden it's like, "Go Ed, go Ed, go Ed!" And so yeah, it's that cut that really just makes the play special.
Just an outrageously good production. If you have not seen it, go out there on YouTube and watch it. It's still available, and sometimes they take it down. Somebody puts it back up. It's just the thing is like a Bobo doll. It'll never go away. It'll always be part of Ravens history. But if you go out there on YouTube, if it's not there this week, check next week again. It'll probably be back. But it's 2004. I think that the production is actually game of the week that it's on. And so there's even more from Billick on that play, because he goes from being upset that Ed takes the ball out to then being happy about Ed running the ball back, to then being pissed off at Will Demps for the holding call on Quincy Carter. But he's more pissed off at the official because how do you even have time to hold? And he's right about it. I mean, there was almost no contact between the two. But
yeah, it does look like he grabbed him and turned him a little bit. And I watching it again, I think he probably would have. I think Carter may have caught Reed if Demps doesn't hold. Now whether Ed Reed would have broken the tackle and still gone in or have gotten tackled, who knows? And it was just that Demps, when you're watching the play, there's a guy trailing the play over his left shoulder, and he's well aware of the guy over his left shoulder, and so he's watching out here. But Carter is coming from over his right shoulder, and if he had been aware, he could have just gotten right in front of Carter, and everything would have been fine. But it was caught him by surprise, and he sort of grabs at the last minute. So
right.
But yeah, and the other thing is with this play, you can find it on YouTube because and I think it may not go down because any kind of compilation of Ed Reed's greatest plays or interceptions,
always includes that.
That's going to be in there, and they always that cut of with the coaches has to be included because it's a huge part of that whole story.
Now, Ed Reed's 2004 season was a remarkable year. His 2008 season was a remarkable year. But in 2004, he had 358 interception return yards. And what's really strange about this game is the very week before, he just had set the NFL record for the longest interception with a 104-yard return. This would have matched it if not for the holding penalty.
Right.
And it 1 week later, I mean, literally like 2 quarters later of football, and Ed Reed is already off to the races again. I did look back at Ed Reed's entire career at one point, and he basically never passed up an opportunity to run a ball out of the end zone. There were times where he went down and was taken down in the end zone. There were times when he was touched down back there, but he basically never passed up an opportunity to run one out. And that's a lot of his NFL career record return yards are based on the fact that he's very aggressive. Nobody followed a block like Ed Reed does. In some cases, it's like Lamar Reed leverage, make people miss. Ed Reed had a little bit of that in terms of being very dangerous with the ball in his hands, but he's unbelievable. He would have been a great running back because he can follow a block like nobody.
Yeah. No, it's and I think part of that was when he first intercepts the ball, he goes out to the goal line, but doesn't cross over the goal line. He runs sort of parallel to the goal line. And I assume that's always him. That's him just waiting for everybody to set up before committing to taking it out.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, the big return against the Dolphins in the 2008 playoffs, he runs across the field, basically waiting for that field to get set up, and then he cuts it back. He's gone. Yeah. He's an unbelievable convoy of blockers. But the Ravens. They didn't like to block for anybody more than they like to block for Ed Reed, including Jamal Lewis, probably. I mean, those defenders just love to play fast break offense. They didn't, with good reason, honestly trust that offense to score if they gave them the football.
And also, you really have to be, you always have to be excited and pay attention because you never know if you're going to have a chance to get the ball because in addition to bringing it out of the end zone, he never passed up an opportunity to lateral the ball.
Great point. He took one in. One of Ed Reed's interception returns actually was, I think, Samari Rolle pitching him the ball. I may be wrong about that. I think it was in a game against the Bengals that happened where they scored their second touchdown of the game, and it was I think Samari Rolle pitched Reed the ball, but it could be Reed pitching it to Rolle. Either way, it was an oddball kind of a situation. They pitched a ball to Landry during the playoffs.
Landry, I remember there was a pitch to Landry, and and one or two of those hit the turf, and you started pulling your hair out because of
It's I all of the gambling Ed Reed does, as great a gambler as Marcus Peters is, Ed Reed was even better. And the payoff for the things he did in his career was outstanding for all that gambling.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So anyway, the Ravens for this game, they came back and they won it 20-17 in overtime. It was the biggest comeback of the Bowler era. They never had another 14-point comeback during the time that Bowler was there. It's interesting. While Bowler was on the team, Wright had a 17-point comeback against Seattle with 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and McNair had a 19-point comeback in that game at Tennessee in 2006, where they were down 26-7 in the second quarter. But Bowler never came back from more than 14.
He didn't engineer those drives.
Yeah. So Ravens failed to make the playoffs. They had a wretched December. They lost 4-5 in a stretch that led into December, and then they won their last game in January, but still missed the playoffs. And very disappointing finish to that season. But a team that defensively was still quite good, and Ed Reed won his only. No, he didn't. He won Defensive Player of the Year that year. Who in 2008 Harrison took it from him, didn't he? Complete garbage. Reed had one of the greatest seasons of all time. And
it was definitely a special year in terms of Ed Reed's play and all that. But yeah, not much. I think that was one of those seasons where the schedule was backloaded. Like we had a lot of easy games up front, and so. And that explained how, you went into this game 5-3 thinking, hey, it's pretty good. But I think that was a lot of bad teams that you beat up on, and you knew that the meat of the schedule was coming up, and you just didn't feel good about the chances against those teams.
Yeah, they lost a big game to Carson Palmer's first year as the starter. So he was a rookie in 2003, but he didn't play. Kitno as the starter. And then Carson Palmer was the starter in 2004. Mm-hmm. And they lost a game to Carson Palmer in December where they led 20-3 in the fourth quarter. That was the one that really kept them out of the playoffs. So a bummer of a finish for that team. Certainly would have loved to add another playoff game at least to this team's resume, but it was what it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adam, really appreciate having you on to talk about this. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Oh, sure. I don't talk a whole lot of football online, but when I do on Twitter, it's my handle is @Minikowski, MINAKOWSKI. So that's where I am.
Outstanding. Other folks out there, if you'd like to do that one play, hit me up. DMs are always open on Twitter. I'll get right back to you. These have been so much fun to do. I want to hear more ideas, and I'm also putting out a couple every couple of days. So people have some additional ideas of plays that haven't been taken yet. Yep. Adam, thanks again for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me. And
we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.
Progressive presents Adjusting to the Suburbs. You used to associate crickets with silence. But since you bought a house in the suburbs, you know crickets hate silence. If any other creature realized rubbing its legs together made a piercing, high-pitched noise, they might think, maybe I won't do that. Constantly. All night long. Luckily, you can save with Progressive by bundling your home and auto. Now that's something to make noise about. Just not constantly. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided in service by affiliates and third-party insurers.